So you think you know New Orleans, right? You hear the name. And immediately your mind conjures up images of Mardi Gras parades, people throwing beads from balconies, the sound of a lone trumpet wailing a jazz tune down a cobblestone street. And look, you're not wrong. That's definitely part of the package. But that's like saying you know me because you've seen a picture of my elbow. It's a piece of the story, but it's not the whole story. New Orleans is so much more than the tourist brochure. It's a city with layers, with secrets whispered on the bayou breeze, a place where history isn't just in the past. It's walking right beside you. Today we're peeling back those layers. We're going on a journey through Creole history and uncovering 10 other things you probably didn't know about this incredible city. We're talking about a history so rich and complex it makes a gumbo look like a simple soup. It's a story of resilience, of blending cultures, of creating something entirely new and beautiful out of a wild mix of ingredients. Forget what you think you know, because the real New Orleans is hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. So grab your Sazerac, or, a cup of coffee, whatever works for you, and get ready to dive deep. We're going to explore the hidden gems, the fascinating traditions, and the untold stories that make the Crescent City one of the most unique places on Earth. By the end of this, you'll see New Orleans not just as a party town, but as a living, breathing museum of culture and history. Let's get into it. All right, first up, let's talk about a word you hear all over New Orleans Creole. Now, for many people, the word Creole conjures up images of a specific type of food, maybe a particular dialect, and yes, that's part of it. But the real story of the Creoles is the story of New Orleans itself. It's not about one single race or ethnicity. Originally, the term Creole was used by the Spanish and French empires to describe people who were born in the colonies, as opposed to those born in Europe. It was a way of saying, you're from here, you're one of us, but the colonial version. So, in Louisiana, it first referred to the children of French and Spanish colonists. They were the European elite, born in the New World. But this is New Orleans, and nothing stays simple for long. The definition began to expand, to breathe. It started to include people of mixed European and African descent, often referred to as Creoles of color or gens de couleur libre, free people of color. These were communities that carved out a unique space in society, often highly educated, skilled artisans and property owners, navigating a world that didn't quite know where to place them. This created a fascinating and complex social hierarchy that was completely unique to New Orleans. You had this vibrant, multi-layered society where culture, language, and heritage were constantly blending. The Creole identity became a testament to this fusion. It was French, it was Spanish, it was African, it was Caribbean, and it was distinctly American, all at the same time. It was a new culture forged in the heat and humidity of the Mississippi Delta, a blend of traditions that you couldn't find anywhere else on the planet. This mixing wasn't just about people. It was about everything they brought with them. It was in the language, a unique patois that blended French with African linguistic structures. It was in the architecture, which we'll get to later. And, of course, it was in the food. Creole cuisine is the perfect metaphor for its people. It takes classic European techniques, like making a roux, and infuses them with African ingredients like okra, Caribbean spices, and Native American file powder. It's a culinary conversation between continents. So when you hear Creole in New Orleans, don't just think of a seasoning blend. Think of a rich, complicated, and beautiful history. Think of a people who created their own world, their own identity, in the heart of the American South. It's the foundational story that sets the stage for everything else that makes this city so magical. It's not just a demographic, it's the city's soul. Now let's talk about something that's often misunderstood, wrapped in Hollywood stereotypes, and frankly, just plain cool: voodoo. When most people think of voodoo, they picture spooky rituals, shrunken heads, and sticking pins in little dolls to curse their enemies. Thanks, movies. But in New Orleans, voodoo, or vodou as it's more accurately known, is a legitimate, deeply spiritual practice with roots that run as deep as the city's cypress trees. It's not a scary cult, it's a religion. Its origins trace back to West Africa, brought to Louisiana by enslaved people who were forced to leave their homes but not their faith. They carried their beliefs and their spirits, the Loa, with them. In the New World, they were forced to practice Catholicism, but they were clever. They syncretized their faith, blending their African spirits with Catholic saints. So, the Virgin Mary might also be Erzuli Freda, the spirit of love, and Saint Patrick, who drove the snakes out of Ireland, became associated with Damballa, the powerful serpent spirit. It was a brilliant act of cultural preservation and spiritual resistance. The most famous figure in New Orleans voodoo is, without a doubt, Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen. She was a legendary practitioner in the 19th century, a Creole woman of color who was both feared and revered. People from all walks of life, rich, poor, black, white, came to her for help. They sought everything from healing potions and love charms to curses on their rivals. She became a powerful and influential figure, holding spectacular public ceremonies in Congo Square that blended African drumming and dancing with religious ritual. These ceremonies were a vital part of life for the enslaved and free black communities. Congo Square was one of the few places where they were allowed to gather on Sundays. It became a cultural epicenter, a place to connect with their heritage, to share music and dance, and to practice their faith openly. This wasn't dark magic. It was community. It was identity. It was a powerful expression of freedom in a world that sought to constrain them at every turn. Today, voodoo is still very much alive in New Orleans. You can visit spiritual shops in the French Quarter that sell herbs, candles, and gris-gris bags. You can consult with modern practitioners, or mambos and houngans. And while the tourist shops might sell you a novelty doll, the true practice is a complex system of belief that honors ancestors, respects nature, and seeks to bring balance and healing to the community. It's a powerful reminder that some things are too strong to be stamped out. You cannot talk about New Orleans without talking about music. It's the city's heartbeat, and at the very core of that heartbeat is jazz. Now, many cities might try to claim a piece of it, but let's be clear. New Orleans is the cradle, the birthplace, the delivery room of jazz. This is where it took its first breath. And like everything else in this city, it was born from a beautiful, chaotic mix of cultures. It didn't just appear out of thin air. It was cooked up in the same cultural gumbo pot as everything else. Think about the ingredients. You had the blues with its raw emotion and storytelling coming up the Mississippi Delta. You had the syncopated rhythms of ragtime. You had the spirituals and gospel music from the churches filled with soul and call and response. And crucially, you had the Caribbean rhythms, especially the Cuban habanera, that filtered into the port city. All of these sounds were swirling around in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in the African American communities. This musical fusion found its home in places like the aforementioned Congo Square, where African drumming traditions were kept alive. It flourished in the Storyville district, the city's infamous red light district, where musicians had steady work in the brothels and dance halls. This is where legends like Buddy Bolden, Freddie Keppard, and a young Louis Armstrong cut their teeth, improvising and innovating, creating a sound that was entirely new. It was music for dancing, for marching, for celebrating, and for mourning. The traditional New Orleans funeral is the perfect example of this. A brass band plays somber hymns or dirges on the way to the cemetery. But on the way back, the mood shifts completely. The band breaks into an upbeat, joyful tune, a celebration of the life that was lived. This tradition, known as the second line, is pure New Orleans. It embodies the city's philosophy of finding joy even in moments of sorrow, of dancing in the face of hardship. It's jazz in its most essential form. From these humble beginnings, jazz exploded onto the world stage. Louis Satchmo Armstrong, a native son, became its first global ambassador, his trumpet and gravelly voice recognized everywhere. The sound of New Orleans traveled up the Mississippi River to Chicago, New York, and beyond, evolving and changing along the way. But its DNA, its soul, will forever be rooted in the streets of the Crescent City. When you walk through the French Quarter today and hear a band playing on the corner, you're not just listening to music. You're hearing over a century of history. Walking through New Orleans is like walking through a living architecture museum. You don't need a guidebook, really. The buildings themselves tell the story of the city's past. The style is so distinct, so iconic. People see a building with intricate wrought iron balconies and immediately think, that's New Orleans. But what you're seeing isn't just one style. It's a beautiful and sometimes complicated conversation between different cultures and different eras, all baked together under the Louisiana sun. Let's start with the French influence because they got here first. The oldest part of the city, the French Quarter, was laid out by them. But here's a fun fact. A lot of the French architecture you see isn't actually French. Two massive fires in the late 1700s, in 1788 and 1794, burned most of the original French colonial buildings to the ground. By the time the city was rebuilt, New Orleans was under Spanish rule. So much of the iconic architecture in the French Quarter is actually Spanish. Mind-blowing, right? The Spanish introduced features like stucco over brick construction, which was more fire-resistant. They built buildings with flat or gently sloped roofs, arched passageways, and most importantly, those famous wrought iron or cast iron balconies. These weren't just for decoration, they were practical. They provided shade for the sidewalks below and created outdoor living spaces, a perfect adaptation to the city's hot, humid climate. The lacy, intricate ironwork became the city's signature look. But the conversation didn't stop there. As you move out from the quarter into neighborhoods like the Garden District, you see the American influence arrive. This is where you find the magnificent Greek Revival and Italianate mansions, with their grand columns, double galleries, porches on both the first and second floors, and sprawling gardens. This was the architecture of the newly wealthy American merchants who flocked to the city after the Louisiana Purchase, wanting to show off their prosperity. And then there's the truly local innovation, the shotgun house. It's a long, narrow house, maybe only 12 feet wide, with rooms arranged one behind the other and doors at the front and back. The name supposedly comes from the idea that you could fire a shotgun through the front door and the pellets would fly clean through the back door without hitting a wall. These were perfect for the city's narrow lots and provided excellent cross-ventilation in the pre-air conditioning era. It's a humble but ingenious design, a perfect reflection of the city's practical, resourceful spirit. In a world obsessed with self-driving cars and hyperloops, there's something incredibly charming about a mode of transportation that moves at a leisurely pace, with clanging bells and rattling windows. In New Orleans, that's the St. Charles Avenue streetcar. And this isn't some new retro-themed tourist ride. This is the real deal. In fact, the St. Charles line is the oldest continuously operating streetcar line in the entire world. Yes, the world. Let that sink in for a minute. The line has been running since 1835. To put that in perspective, that's before Texas was a state, before the invention of the telephone, and when Andrew Jackson was president. Originally, it was powered by steam, then horses, and finally, in 1893, it was converted to electricity, which is how it still runs today. The cars themselves, with their distinctive olive green paint, polished brass fittings, and reversible wooden seats, are not replicas. They are historic landmarks in their own right, some of them dating back to the 1920s. Riding the streetcar is like taking a trip back in time. For just $1.25, you can embark on a 6.5-mile journey that's one of the best sightseeing tours in the city. The route takes you away from the hustle of the downtown area, down the Grand St. Charles Avenue, under a breathtaking canopy of ancient live oak trees. It's a moving picture window onto some of the city's most beautiful scenery. You'll glide past the stunning mansions of the Garden District, each one more opulent than the last. You'll pass Loyola and Tulane universities with their bustling student life. The gentle rocking and the rhythmic clack-clack of the wheels on the track is the soundtrack to this journey. The windows are usually open, letting in the thick, floral-scented air. It's the opposite of a rushed commute. It's an experience to be savored. It's more than just a tourist attraction, though. For locals, the streetcar is a beloved and practical part of daily life, a reliable way to get from uptown to downtown. It's a shared public space where people from all walks of life sit side by side. In a city that has undergone so much change, the steadfast, rumbling presence of the St. Charles streetcar is a comforting constant, a green and mahogany thread connecting the city's past to its present. When you hear Mardi Gras, you probably picture floats, beads, and boisterous crowds on Bourbon Street. But there's another Mardi Gras tradition, one that's far from the tourist trail, that is one of the most spectacular and meaningful cultural expressions in all of America. I'm talking about the Mardi Gras Indians. And no, this has nothing to do with cultural appropriation. This is a tradition born out of a unique historical alliance and a profound statement of Black resistance and identity. The tradition dates back to the 19th century, when African Americans were excluded from the official Mardi Gras cruise and parades. Instead of being left out, they created their own celebration. They drew inspiration from the Native American tribes who had provided refuge to runaway slaves in the Louisiana bayous. This was an act of honoring that solidarity. By masking Indian, they were paying respect to the people who had helped them in their struggle for freedom. The heart of this tradition is the suit, and calling it a costume feels like a massive understatement. These are monumental works of folk art. Members of the different tribes with names like the Wild Magnolias or the Golden Eagles spend the entire year and thousands of dollars hand-sewing their suits. They are incredibly elaborate creations, adorned with intricate beadwork, vibrant feathers, and sequins, often depicting stories and symbols. Each suit is a masterpiece, weighing up to 150 pounds and is only worn once in public. On Mardi Gras morning, long before the big parades start, the tribes take to the streets in their neighborhoods, like Treme and the 7th Ward. The big chief leads his tribe, chanting and singing traditional songs. When two tribes meet, it's a sight to behold. Instead of violence, as was sometimes the case in the early days, they now engage in a ritualized battle of artistry and style. The chiefs confront each other, singing praises about their own suit's beauty and craftsmanship. "My suit is the prettiest," they'll chant. It's a breathtaking display of pride and creativity. This tradition is a living, breathing part of New Orleans culture, passed down through generations. It's a powerful assertion of identity, a celebration of community, and a testament to the resilience of a people who, when shut out of the main party, decided to create their own. One that was more beautiful, more meaningful, and more profound than anyone could have imagined. It's the soul of Mardi Gras, hidden in plain sight. Okay, let's switch gears and turn down the lights a little bit. Because you can't talk about New Orleans without acknowledging its spooky side. The city consistently ranks as one of, if not most haunted city in America. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. With its centuries of dramatic history, its unique burial customs, and a penchant for a good story, New Orleans is the perfect setting for a ghost story. Or 1,000 of them. The city's history is filled with tragedy, plagues, fires, wars, and hurricanes. That's a lot of potential for restless spirits. Every corner of the French Quarter seems to have a story attached to it. You have the famous Lalaurie Mansion, for instance, home to the gruesome tale of Madame Delphine Lalaurie, a high society woman who was discovered to be brutally torturing enslaved people in her attic. Her spirit, and those of her victims, are said to still haunt the property. It's a truly dark chapter in the city's history, and the building gives off an undeniable chill. Then there are the hotels. The Hotel Monteleone is famous not just for its rotating carousel bar, but for its legion of resident ghosts, including child spirits who are said to play in the halls. Guests and staff have reported doors opening and closing on their own, the sounds of children laughing, and apparitions appearing at the foot of their beds. It's so well known that the hotel is a regular stop on the city's many ghost tours, and it's not just buildings. Even the restaurants have their spectral patrons. Muriel's Jackson Square is said to be haunted by its former owner, Pierre-Antoine Lepardi Jourdan, who lost the home in a card game and took his own life in the building in 1814. The restaurant keeps a table permanently reserved for his spirit, complete with bread and wine, to keep him happy. They say you can sometimes see his ghostly form shimmering in the seance lounges upstairs. Whether you're a true believer in the paranormal or a complete skeptic, you can't deny the power of these stories. They are woven into the fabric of the city. The ghost tours that wind through the dark streets at night are a huge part of the tourism industry. These tales are a way of keeping the city's dramatic and often tragic history alive. In New Orleans, the past is never truly dead and buried. Sometimes it's just waiting for you in a dark corner. Let's lighten things up a bit, shall we? From ghosts to pastries. In New Orleans, there is one sweet treat that reigns supreme. It's a simple, humble, yet utterly addictive creation: the beignet. If you've been to New Orleans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A square of fried dough, puffy like a little pillow, buried under a mountain of powdered sugar. It's not a donut. It's not a fritter. It is, quite simply, a beignet. And eating one is a rite of passage. The tradition of the beignet was brought to Louisiana by the French Acadian colonists, the Cajuns, in the 18th century. It's essentially a descendant of the French choux pastry. But in New Orleans, it became an institution. The epicenter of this institution, the place that is synonymous with beignets, is Café du Monde. Located in the French Market, it's been serving up beignets and chicory coffee 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, since 1862. It only closes for Christmas and the occasional hurricane. Visiting Café du Monde is an experience. There's usually a line. The tables are covered in a sticky film of sugar and the floor is white with the stuff. You sit down and a waiter in a paper hat will quickly take your order. There's not much of a menu. You're there for beignets and café au lait. The beignets arrive piping hot, in an order of 3, absolutely blanketed in powdered sugar. The first rule of eating a beignet is, don't wear black. The second rule is, don't inhale when you take a bite. You will create a sugar storm. While Café du Monde is the most famous, there's a friendly rivalry with Café Beignet, which also has several locations and a fiercely loyal following. Locals will debate endlessly about which one is better, but the truth is, the love for beignets goes beyond these famous spots. You can find them all over the city, from neighborhood bakeries to upscale restaurants offering gourmet versions with savory fillings or fancy dipping sauces. It's more than just a dessert. It's a social ritual. It's the perfect late-night snack after a night of music, the perfect breakfast to start your day, the perfect excuse to sit down with a friend and watch the world go by. That simple pleasure of a hot, sweet, messy pastry and a strong cup of coffee is a quintessential New Orleans moment. It's simple, it's delicious, and it's covered in a ridiculous amount of sugar. What's not to love? We've talked a lot about the French Quarter. It's the historic heart of the city, the part everyone wants to see. It's on every postcard, in every movie. Bourbon Street, Jackson Square, St. Louis Cathedral, it's all there. But here's a little secret that hides in plain sight. Locals, especially those who have been around for a while, don't always call it the French Quarter. Its original and official name is the Vieux Carré. Vieux Carré, it's French, and it translates literally to Old Square. That's exactly what it is. When the city was founded by the French in 1718, this was the original footprint of New Orleans. It was a planned grid of streets, a perfect square, laid out by a French royal engineer. This was the entire city, a walled settlement on a crescent-shaped bend of the Mississippi River. Everything outside this old square was just swamp and plantation land. So why did it become known as the French Quarter? Well, after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, a flood of Americans moved into the city, but they didn't really settle in the old part of town. The Creoles, who lived in the Vieux Carré, were a tight-knit community with their own language, culture, and customs. They saw the arriving Americans as loud, brash, and, honestly, a bit uncultured. So the Americans settled uptown, on the other side of the main commercial street, Canal Street. This created a cultural dividing line. The Americans started referring to the old Creole section as the French Quarter to distinguish it from the new American sector. The name stuck, especially with tourists and newcomers. It was a simple, descriptive name that made sense. But for the Creoles, and for many New Orleanians who cherish the city's deep history, Vieux Carré remains the proper term. It's a nod to its origins, a sign of respect for the city's founders. So next time you're visiting, you can show off a little bit. While you're walking down Bourbon Street or admiring the architecture on Royal Street, you can mention to your friends, the Vieux Carré is so beautiful this time of year. It's a small detail, but it's one of those things that shows you understand the city on a slightly deeper level. It acknowledges that before it was a world-famous tourist destination, it was simply the old square, the original home of New Orleans. One of the most striking and unforgettable sights in New Orleans isn't a building or a park, but a cemetery. The city's cemeteries are famous for their rows of ornate above-ground tombs. They look like miniature cities, with little stone and plaster houses lining pathways, which is why they're often called the cities of the dead. And the reason for this unique burial style is a classic New Orleans story of practicality meeting necessity. The common belief is that the tombs are above ground because the city is below sea level, and if you tried to bury someone 6 feet under, the coffin would just pop back up out of the waterlogged ground. And while there's some truth to that, the high water table definitely makes in-ground burial tricky. It's not the whole story. The tradition was actually brought over by the Spanish and French, who had similar burial customs in their own swampy coastal regions of Europe. These tombs or oven vaults are often family tombs. They are designed to be reused over and over again. Here's how it works. When a family member dies, they are placed inside the tomb. Due to the intense Louisiana heat inside the sealed vault, the body decomposes relatively quickly. By law, a tomb cannot be reused for at least 1 year and 1 day. After that time has passed, the tomb can be opened. The remains of the previous occupant are swept to the back or dropped into a receptacle below, making room for the next family member. It's an incredibly efficient, if slightly macabre, system. It means that generations upon generations of the same family can be interred in a single small plot of land. Some of the most famous of these cemeteries are St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, the city's oldest, and Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 in the Garden District. St. Louis No. 1 is the final resting place of many famous New Orleanians, including, reputedly, the voodoo queen Marie Laveau herself. Her tomb is covered in X marks left by visitors hoping for a wish to be granted. These cemeteries are beautiful, haunting, and deeply historic places. They are filled with incredible examples of funerary art and architecture, from simple plaster-over-brick vaults to grand, elaborate marble tombs that look like Greek temples. They are quiet, sacred spaces that tell the story of the city's families, its plagues, and its enduring traditions. They are a powerful reminder that in New Orleans, life and death are always in close conversation. In most American cities, the grassy or paved strip in the middle of a wide street is called a median. It's a simple, functional word, but not in New Orleans. Here, it's called the neutral ground. And like everything else in this city, that name has a story. It's a story about the city's cultural divide and the one place where two rival groups could, theoretically, meet without killing each other. To understand it, we have to go back to the time just after the Louisiana Purchase. As we mentioned earlier, the city was split. You had the French-speaking Creoles living in the Vieux Carré, and the new English-speaking Americans settling uptown on the other side of Canal Street, and they did not get along. There was a lot of tension, mistrust, and outright animosity between the two groups. They had different languages, different customs, and different business practices. Canal Street, which was designed to be the grandest boulevard in the city, became the physical and cultural dividing line. It was a wide, imposing street. The grassy median down its center became the unofficial boundary. It was the one place where members from both communities could meet and do business without having to set foot on the other's turf. It was, literally, neutral ground. A demilitarized zone in the middle of a cultural Cold War. The name stuck, and it didn't just stick for Canal Street. Over time, neutral ground became the universal New Orleans term for any median strip on any street in the city. It's a linguistic quirk that has been passed down through generations. If you're in New Orleans and you call it a median, people will know immediately that you're not from around here. It's one of those little shibboleths, a piece of local slang that's steeped in history. Today, the neutral grounds are beloved public spaces. During Mardi Gras, they are prime parade-watching spots, where families set up ladders, tents, and barbecues for the day. On St. Charles Avenue, the neutral ground is the path for the historic streetcar. It's a place for jogging, for walking your dog, for living life. It's a beautiful evolution, from a symbol of division to a symbol of community and celebration. It's a perfect metaphor for New Orleans itself, a city that took its conflicts and turned them into common ground. So there you have it. Creole history, voodoo queens, haunted mansions, and the secret meaning of the neutral ground. We've journeyed through just a handful of the stories that make New Orleans a city unlike any other. We've seen how its history isn't something locked away in a museum. It's alive in the music, the food, the architecture, and even in the slang people use every day. The city's past is always present, adding depth and flavor to every single experience. It's a place that doesn't just invite you to visit, it invites you to participate, to listen, and to learn. But here's the thing. No video can truly capture the magic of this place. You have to feel the humidity on your skin, hear the distant sound of a brass band, taste a hot beignet, and smell the sweet olive and jasmine in the air. I wholeheartedly encourage you to go and experience it for yourself. Go wander through the Vieux Carré, ride the streetcar all the way to the end of the line, listen to some live jazz on Frenchmen Street, and just let the city reveal its secrets to you. Be open, be curious, and let New Orleans work its spell on you. And that brings me to you all. I know there are countless other amazing facts and hidden stories about the Crescent City that we didn't get to today. So I want to hear from you. What are your favorite surprising facts about New Orleans? Have you had a ghostly encounter? Do you have a favorite spot for beignets that isn't Café du Monde? Share your stories and your knowledge in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for watching, and as they say in the Big Easy,